First of all, thank you everyone who spoke today. It's very inspiring, and I definitely learned a lot. I will present my topic. It's, as Andy said, UX and the Philosopher's Stone. And I hope I'm not disappointing anyone. It's not going to be about Harry Potter. It will be about philosophy, user experience, and how when you combine the two, you can really open your mind to create and shape better experiences for our users, for ourselves, and for a better world. Okay, first let me introduce myself. My name is Essie Zuberman. I'm 32 years old. I was born and raised in Israel, and I moved here 2.5 years ago, together with my dog Parker. The middle picture is what my boyfriend says sums me up best. Optimistic, happy, and someone else will make sure things are in order. I'm a big fan of Taylor Swift, and it's important that I will say that because if I have to improvise at any point, I will talk about her because I think she's a user experience mastermind. I love traveling, experiencing the world, new foods, new people, new cultures, and I also really like listening to podcasts. And last week, while I was doing my morning walk with Parker, I listened to one of my favorites. It's On Purpose with Jay Shetty. I don't know if anyone knows that. Awesome. And he hosted Tom Hanks, the actor. And at some point, Tom said something that made me press pause and wait until I get back home so I could write it down and bring it to you. Let me read it. The work that an actor does that is not told to anybody. It's not just showing up on time and learning new words and doing what you're told. There is something beyond that, and that beyond was always 15 times greater than the actual physical showing up. Now, you might think, what does acting has to do with what we're doing here? And I'll say it is the user experience. And the second thing you might wonder is, what is this beyond? So let's start to dive deeper into the topic and find it out. As I promised, I'm going to talk a little bit about philosophy. And I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. I don't know you, but I do know that out of 100 students that studied neuroscience with me, my best friend and I were the only ones who chose to combine it with philosophy. So a short background, philosophy is basically asking questions, the art of asking questions about anything. You probably heard philosophers asking, what is the meaning of life? That's probably the biggest question ever that no one can answer. But to be honest, there's never an answer in philosophy. There are a lot of arguments, a lot of questions, a lot of conclusions, but never a solution. What it does do, it invites us to open our minds, questioning things, challenging the way we think, the way we see the world, and by that we can make better decisions, come up with better solutions, and think of things in another way. I chose 3 philosophers that were called the empiricists, and I chose to talk about them because they were known by their arguments about the human experience. The first one was a British one, British philosopher, John Locke, and what he said is that we're born tabula rasa, which means blank slate. We're born and there's nothing on it, nothing, no innate knowledge. That's basically what they all claim, but they approach it a bit differently. So everything, according to John Locke, everything that we know from that moment on is what we can see, what we can taste, what we can hear, what we can feel, and that's it. Then we have George Berkeley, who was an Irish philosopher, and he said that not only we know things by perceiving them with our senses, if we don't perceive it, it doesn't exist. Basically means that the pin that you see here is just a bundle of light and color, and if I put it here, it doesn't exist anymore. And it's interesting because I started listening to a book today, and they talked a little about quantum physics, and it kind of resonates together, which is really interesting. Imagine. The next one is David Hume. David Hume was a Scottish philosopher, and he was talking a lot about cause and effect. And the thing I want to talk about is his argument about the way we see the world in patterns. So we think about future experiences as what we already know happened before. What he says, basically, let me just share this experience with you. What will happen if I let go of this pen?
Will fall.
It will fall. Are you sure 100%? Yes. Anyone thinks it will not fall? No. Okay. You were right. But what he said is that this is how we decide the future. Even though we didn't perceive it yet, we know because this is what happened until now. Will it keep happening for eternity? Maybe, and maybe not. We see technology and how it changes so fast, and how things that happened before are not happening today. And science keeps changing, and new theories, and everything is new. So we need to catch up on that. How does all that relate to user experience and what we do? I'm gonna call. Oh wait, before any questions? Anyone? Before I'm jumping to fun philosophy. No. Okay, perfect. Okay, so story time. I'm gonna tell you about my time in Vietnam. Anyone was there? Okay, so you're gonna relate to what I'm about to say. So the moment you go out to the street in Hanoi, the first thing that comes in mind is chaos. What's happening here? The pavement is not for pedestrians. It's parking for motorcycles, it's for the sellers, it's for the little colorful tables and chairs of the restaurants. And you're lucky if you have like a little square to stand on before you make your way into the dangerous road that belongs to everybody. Cars, doesn't matter which car, bikes, motorcycles, and pedestrians. Now the first thing we're gonna think, especially if we're dealing with user experience, I don't know if you all experienced that, but since I started practicing it, this is all I can see in the world. I will go somewhere, and if I'm finding something hard to do, it will be, that's bad user experience, that's a good user experience. And our mind will immediately jump into a solution mindset. Okay, so I need to put a street light here, and some signs, and a crosswalk, and then everything will be great, because how they can live here? They're probably having so many accidents, and people are not safe. And what we do is we take something that we think is a problem, because of what we know so far, and we make it a problem for others. And it might be true, and maybe we're just creating a problem where it doesn't exist. So I understood. I started looking at it like the philosophers looked at it. First of all, if I want to experience it, and if I was trying to solve any problem there, I need to first experience it like they are experiencing it. So everything I know so far needs to be parked, and I will pick it up on my way back home. And I need to come to Bula Rasa and just find out, talk to the people, see what they're doing, see how they're living their lives. And that's the best way to actually come to any beginning of thinking of solution. Because what will happen if I'll just put a crossroad somewhere? Nothing. It doesn't exist, just like the pen, because they're crossing the roads everywhere. They don't care. So the next topic will be the discovering mindset, which is exactly what we do when we kind of put everything we know aside and step away for a second from the solution mindset or from assumption or what we think we know, because sometimes it's the easiest, fastest way to kind of keep moving forward with design, with the company, with everything related. And it's not only user experience, it's good to know it for basically every role in the company, in my opinion. It's about understanding the users, and understanding means really know how they feel, what they think, why do they choose us, and why aren't they choosing us? Who are we for them? What do they think about when they see us? Understanding the problems, not the problems that we think are a problem, but the real problems, because sometimes we're patching up little stuff that we think cause, I don't know, drop in conversion or dissatisfaction of users, when there's a big bleeding wound that we don't even see. And only through discovery we can find it out. We need to understand the existing constraints. We need to know which technology we have. We need to understand our resources, capabilities, really come up with everything that is possible. And a shared vision, which is very important. We talked about it a couple of times today. To define success, to define where we want to get and how we want to do it. And when we have so much information, we can come up with better solutions. Now, I can relate that to a topic that we talked a lot about today, which is AI. And one thing that I don't think was talked about is the fear of AI. So AI is cool. Super cool technology, so advanced, it could do amazing, incredible, brilliant stuff. But at the same time, there's this fear of AI that we don't always think about. I think about because I'm afraid of AI, to be honest. I'm not using it that much, sometimes ChatGPT, but I'm still in a process of really adjusting to it and trust it. So if we're thinking from our perspectives, if we want to start using more AI, we need to understand how our users feeling about it, the colleagues, the companies we're giving service to. Maybe they don't trust AI, and then we come up to them and asking them to start using it. And if we understand the fear and where it's coming from, we can also tackle it in a better way. Okay, let me give you an example. This is a table that I took from a research that was made during the pandemic about the barriers that people have when using meditation apps. And they had a lot of super interesting finds, but what I want to show you is the differences that you see between the apps and what they are used for. And this is another topic that we sometimes don't take into account, and we don't discover ourselves and who we are and what our users want from us and why are they using our product, because there are many banks and many telecom companies and health insurances, and we can keep competing or keep looking what others are doing, but then sometimes, like Headspace, that was used for anxiety, stress management, focus, and mindfulness. And then you have Calm, that was used for sleep, focus, and stress management. So Calm had the advantage of being used for sleep. And Headspace was also for mindfulness. So it's like you said this morning, who we are and what do our users see in us. And that could be a big advantage to know. And we, again, can discover it in the discovery phase. Now, let's do a little practice. What is the problem here? What is the problem that the sign is coming to solve?
The dogs cannot poo there because there is a camera.
They put the sign. Why do they put the sign? Maybe I'll ask it like that.
There's a lot of dogs.
A lot of dogs pooing.
Yeah, they don't. Exactly.
A warning about three-legged dogs.
Okay, anyone owns a dog here? Okay. Were you ever able to stop them from pooping? Of course not. And this sign, I see it a lot around the Netherlands. And every time I walk by a sign like that, I'm giggling a little because I know that if Parker will start cooking, there's no way I can move him from there. But they probably didn't know that when they tried to solve that problem. So is it a good solution? Maybe yes, maybe not. Maybe people will just stay away from that area, or maybe they will just giggle like me. And then I will ask you, how would you start solving it? What would you do?
Have something to clean up the poop to help the owner.
Sorry?
Create something to help the owner clean up the poop so it doesn't leave a mess.
All right. Good one. And?
Have a dispenser of plastic bags.
Okay.
Make dogs illegal. Ban, ban.
Shoes all door.
Ban dogs. That's also an option. So both options being like giving people the the way to pick up the poop and ban dogs completely. There's are two valid solutions that would probably be better than this one. But then what will people feel about these two solutions? I would say that if you, as a dog owner, if I'll see a sign that just bans dog, it will give me some sort of a negative feeling. Although this is specifically a parking lot and I don't see any reason for me to get in there. But really putting like bags around for people to just pick after them, because I'll let you in on the secret. Sometimes we forget the new roll of bags at home. And then it just stayed there and we hope no one saw it. Yeah, so that's just a little practice to show how even a little discovery, a little asking of questions and talking to the people can improve things. Now, we talked a lot about the discovery and what we're doing and why to do it. And there is the beyond that Tom Hanks was talking about. Because we are waking up every day and showing up to the office and we're doing what we need to do. But then there's the thing that we add to it. Something that makes us happy. And I will argue that it usually involves people. Because if we know that we're making people's life better, we feel better. And especially in our fields, where the services that we give are something that people actually need. They cannot wake up tomorrow and say, I'm not going to use phone anymore. I'm not going to use banking anymore. It's not possible. So it means we have a lot of power when designing experiences, when shaping the way we're communicating with them, the customer experience. We have a lot of power there, because if we prevented one person from being frustrated and something they wanted to do they did in 5 minutes instead of half an hour of back and forth, we might give this person 20 minutes with their kids and with a happy face and not a frustrated one. So when we understand that, we can understand the beyond. And it's not only at work and with the users we are creating the experience for, it's also in the real world. How do I experience the world, and which experience do I give to people? How do I approach people? If I start approaching my friends and family and partner with a discovery mindset and not a solution mindset, which means basically if my friend doesn't think the same about politics as me, I will not get annoyed and say, how could you think that? I will just ask, why do you think that? Let's talk about it. Let's understand each other. And then we can not agree at the end, but then at least we understood each other better. And that brings people together. And I think we talked as well throughout the day about people, which is the center of what we do. And once we really take it into that mindset of let's discover, let's understand, let's look at things in a different way, ask questions, be a little bit of philosophers in our lives. Imagine how better the world can be and how many good and positive human connections we can have. which is really needed nowadays. That's it. Thank you all. Any questions?
Any questions on that? Yes, question 5.
I'm really interested in how you are putting these ideas in your work.
In my work. So,
Because I like the idea of asking questions and not the polarization course we have today.
yeah.
But there's a difference between how are you having conversations in I don't know in between people, but there's I guess a difference when you do it in your work as you do it when you are in China. How do you practice this?
First, I think the difference, there is a difference. The difference will be the questions themselves and maybe how I will ask them. For me, what I do is, first of all, if I'm getting any task or there's any requirement for me to design anything, I will first start with asking questions. Why do we do that? Why do we need that? What is it based on? Who are the users? What is the journey? A lot of questions. It might not always be like a full-blown discovery phase, but there will be a lot of questions. And I think, and I can also say that not all, I don't get answers all the time. And I'm trying to do my best to create the best experience with the information I have. So I will ask as many questions as possible, and if I don't get answers, then I will try to ask different questions. And I will also try to challenge my colleagues to find out this information or to ask the questions to someone else. And I know that we can sometimes be the only one asking questions or just a bunch of people that care about the same things as us. And money plays a big role in every company. But I think that the more we do that, we can inspire more people, and maybe we'll make a big change, and maybe it will be a small change. But I can definitely say that I do see a change in the 2.5 years that I'm working at Labar, of the way we approach things.
I had a similar question, but I would just a little bit, if I may reflect that. I currently study at the Stockholm School of Economics, and we discussed just last month about the trap of falling into the rabbit hole of two things. The first one was also the thing that the previous speaker said about you are not the user. Don't always compare this one. And the second one is your approach, and I will say as from my experience, it also steps in the leadership and also the cultural approach of the company. You need to cultivate a lot this approach of asking a lot of questions and leading the change, and that's why leadership really kicks in. I think it plays a crucial role in the change management, or even in the implementation of different tools or new approaches and so on. But rather than that, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you so much. So there was the
No,
question.
just like,
Oh, okay. Thank you.
but if you have something to add.
Yeah, about we are not the user. I agree with that when it comes to sometimes we're, like I said at the beginning, I stepped into the street in Hanoi and I started solving problems, but I'm not a Vietnamese person. They are living their best life like that. So I'm not the user. I cannot solve problems that are not theirs. But it is important to empathize with the user, and that's what asking the questions and understanding will develop. That empathy and understanding. So we're not the user, but we can imagine being in their shoes and feeling their struggles or their pain points or the challenge points. And that will also help us create that experience.
If I can comment on that, because kind of in general I agree that that should be the point, but I think I recently read an interesting study about user interfaces and their dependence on the culture. So let's say the way that you describe Vietnamese streets are actually actually reflected in the user interfaces that kind of they operate. Yeah, if you look in China, you have roughly the same chaos, maybe a little bit organized. And if you look at Chinese apps, like they're far away from the Apple kind of Scandinavian design. Yeah? So I think, and it might be like a bold suggestion, that no Western designer is going to be able to really kind of deep down understand the Eastern atmosphere and approach in terms of making a proper design. And I'm of course super simplified, right?
Yeah, no, I understand. I mean, definitely not in a 2 weeks trip, but I believe that after a while of really getting to know the people and the way they live and what they do and how they think about things, you can get close to that and understand what are the problems that you need to fix and kind of start A/B testing. Yeah.
Loved your talk. Recognize a lot of these things.
Thank you.
I'm curious too, because I think asking questions always leads to kind of more stuff to ask and to explore, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that. Where do you cut off and say, okay, I know enough. I go to action and I start developing, designing, building, delivering.
I think naturally you will get the stop in the company because we usually have deadlines, there are things to start taking care of, another project, another thing that is coming. So I will say maybe you can limit it in time or the amount of discovery that you're doing. And of course, as I said, we need to kind of have the vision and define success, and according to that find out what is the information we need to know. And yeah, I think there will be a point where we need to kind of analyze ourselves, whereas this is enough and this is information that might be helpful but is not really needed. So it's always kind of check up with ourselves. When is it in?
Yeah. And do you also have the opposite, where you get a deadline and you know it's not enough for the problem you
Sorry?
The opposite, right? Like you get a deadline, but you know like the amount of discovery needed to solve that problem is more than the time you have.
Yeah. Which a lot of times this is the case. And I don't know if it's the best solution, but this is how I deal with it right now. I'm just saying, I'm just choosing my battles. If it's a problem that I think will really benefit the user and will change things, I will fight for it. But if it's just changing a little CTA or make another page about something that I think, okay, there's not a lot of traffic there, it will not change someone's whole journey, then again, choose my battles.
Maybe to add, I think that's why we define MVPs and lovable products, and then you work towards, I would say, an MVP, and then you continue your discovery even after you have launched the solution.
Yeah. Thank you.
I just want to
Alright.
add one thing as well.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate to go out and do some primary research in health.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at things like diabetes and many of the major chronic diseases, a lot of doctors are going, 40 to 50% of our patients are just not adhering to the medication. What's wrong with them? We tell them they should be, in diabetes case, eating healthier food, doing more exercise, measuring their glucose, taking their insulin, but they're not doing it. So part of the work I did was, okay, let's go and sit with diabetics. What's it like to be diagnosed with diabetes? How does it change your life? Who do you become when you're a diabetic? When you sit down with people and talk to them, forget the medication for a bit and just say, what's it like? It changes their identity, changes their sense of self, it changes their fear about the future, it changes the way they think about their social engagements. And once you understand all of those things, you start to say, now I understand why they're not doing these things. And if we're going to speak to the lived experience of diabetes, for example, we need to understand the human story and the human context in which this thing sits, such that we can speak to them as human beings, not just people who receive our instructions or our medications. So I think what you said is really, really powerful.
Thank you so much.
Great, well, let's give it a round of applause. Right, I'd like like to invite two of our